Morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for the Importers Distributors Perspective webinar. My name is Ken Block. I'm with Alberta Agriculture in Edmonton. We'll be your host today. Now, this is the third and final webinar in our Importing to Mexico webinar series. Our presenter today is Mark Magdule. Mark is the Chief Executive Officer and Operating and Managing Partner of New York Deli and Bagel. New York Deli and Bagel began operations in 1992 as a freestanding concept restaurant specializing in delicatessen served in an informal ambiance. The concept was an instant success with Mexico's upper middle and upper class clientele who appreciate quality food, service, and attention. Now, Mark is a 1976 graduate of Temple University in Philadelphia in business administration and has entrepreneurial experience in the specialty food areas in the U.S. He has contributed to the creation and success of New York Deli and Bagel concept as adapted to the Mexican marketplace. Now, a few notes before I hand things over to Mark. If you have any technical issues with WebEx, send me a chat and I'll try and sort it out. Also, we encourage participant interaction. So if you have a question, open your chat box. Now, you can find that at the drop-down menu on the top of your screen. And once there, type in your question and send it to me, the host. At the end of the presentation, during our Q&A session, I'll pose the question to the presenter so that all the participants can hear. Now, we're anticipating about 45 minutes for the webinar. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mark. Mark?
Thank you, Ken. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mexico via today's technology. I'm not used to giving these types of presentations without seeing my audience. Last one we did was up in Toronto back in the month of June, which was the Global Export Forum. But it's nothing new for me to talk to myself. Being the father of two sons, I grew up, or have them growing up with me talking to myself. With a company here in Mexico with 50 employees, it's obvious that I also do a lot of talking to myself at times as well. What I'd like to present today, well, again, I want to interrupt myself and say thank you to Paola Zaragoza, who invited me to participate in this event. And I welcome everyone as well, and hopefully this will fulfill everyone's expectations. What we're going to talk about today, we'll go over a lot of the demographics, or some of the most important demographics that pertain to our industry. We'll talk about what's happening in Mexico, and what effects it does have for our food goods, what opportunities there are here in Mexico, a few approaches to cash in on these opportunities, what are the different food distribution channels, some considerations to take into account for getting into the marketplace. And at the very end, this is something that Paola asked me to work on for you. It's a little exercise in costing and pricing for the marketplace. So I'm going to be playing with my computer. We're going to the first part here, where our beginning with Adam Smith, famous economist, English economist, who said that consumption is the sole end and purpose of all production. The interest of the producer ought to be attended to only so far as it may be necessary for promoting that of the consumer. Obviously, we're all in business. We're all looking for a way to get our products to the consumer. And taking that into play, we'll talk about the consumer a little bit. In Mexico, we're talking about a public population of 118 million, according to data that we sourced from 2013. Data here is not always the most accurate, but this will give you a good idea to the size of our marketplace. Knowing what the population in Canada is somewhere below 40 million, between 35, 40 million people. You know, our country is quite big. Just Mexico City alone, where we are located, has a population of somewhere around 20, 22 million people. That would probably cover most of the western part of Canada, probably the central part of Canada as well. But anyway, our demographics are composed of 52.6% women and 47.4% men. So if there's any single guys out there who are interested in coming down, yeah, there's always a place, and there's always a few extra women around to go to be found here. Our population is young, between up to 14 years of age. We have 28% of the population. The productive side of the population between 15 and 64 years of age is 65.2% of the population, and our final group of older than 65 makes up 6.6% of the population. Our GMP per capita is ranked as the 63rd in the world, and Doing Business organization has ranked Mexico as the 53rd most important economy in the world. It is very important to note, though, that of our 118 million population, we do have a large amount of poverty, and most people do think of Mexico as a poor country. We do have a 46% of the population who lives under what we would consider very unfavorable conditions, and 12% would be considered to be in extreme poverty as well. Our biggest problems, though, are talking about most of the other population, our active population, the economically active population. By the way, I did have a note here, and since I'm working between notes and my screen here, I have to refer to them as well. Of the population, we do have 49 million people who are economically active that do contribute to our GDP, which, again, comparing that to Canada, is about 20% more than the total population of Canada. Within that the population that we're referring to, there's a big problem in Mexico with obesity. As you can see on the screen there, 32.4% of our population, by data that we found from 2012, considers that there is a problem with obesity. Overweight, 38%, with a combined total of 71.2%. By gender, males are 24.2% of the males are fat, and females 34.5%. In children, this is our biggest concern as well. We have a large population of children that do have this problem with obesity. We're talking about 28% boys and 29% girls. The next biggest problem that we would like to talk about and faces Mexico as a population is diabetes. Here, the information is very difficult to put a pin down, rather. Diabetes, according to some of the information we have, is between 10 and 12% of the population, with a world ranking of 6th place. This information is very difficult to nail down because most people that do have diabetes don't even realize they have the disease. Here in Mexico is our leading cause of death, and it really taps into a large percentage of our total health budget, as you can see there, at 20%. As I mentioned, most of the people with diabetes go undetected here, and it is a large killer of our population. A good diet is associated with social success here, beauty and health. Food and beverages and tobacco also account for 33% of Mexicans' spending habits. So, as you can see, people here in that 49% of the population that's active, that can be considered, or lower middle class on up, okay, there's a large aspiring part of the population that is looking to be accepted socially. And like I had mentioned, with this, people tend to overdo it a little bit, and their eating habits are also something that needs to be analyzed and reflected when considering how to get into the marketplace. So we're going to move on and talk about the market opportunities, but before doing that, and again, please excuse any errors that I'm making here in order. I'm trying to follow notes and again, the screen. In Mexico, this January 1st, a new tax came into play here, which has affected the food industry tremendously, in hopes of helping the population to reduce the problems of obesity and diabetes. As you can see on the screen, we have a new tax that has been imposed of 8% on any products that have 275 kilocalories per 100 grams. And that doesn't mean per serving. This means 100 grams. So you might have a portion of 30 grams or 20 grams per serving. But if your total calorie count per 100 grams reaches 275 calories or more, there's an 8% tax on these items. You can see the list, and there are even products that are on the list that you would think are staple goods that are affected as well because of this law. I do want to talk about this a little bit because it's, we call it the fat tax, and it's known in other countries as well. It's been it's been tried in other countries. For example, in Denmark, in 2011, there's a €2.15 charge per kilo on saturated fats. For example, butter costs went up there more than 30%. Chips in that marketplace went up over 8%. In Finland, for example, there's a tax on confectionery products at 75 cents euro per kilo, which affects biscuits, buns, pastries. Some things are exempt, but even so, there's even the on the soft drinks there in Finland, 7.5 cents per liter has been charged. Just last year, I think it was in New York City, they tried to impose also a junk food tax, which got shot down. France has a soft drink tax as well at 7.2 cents euro per liter. Here in Mexico, again, I can't give you the freshest data. I can tell you that the economy on a whole has been down, has not lived up to the new expectations because of the overall fiscal reforms. It's hard to put our finger right now on which line has been most affecting the overall economy, but definitely big companies like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, with their junk lines also, like Frito-Lay down here, which goes under a different name, have all been affected with this new tax. Again, it's the taxes that have been collected have helped the economy, but at the end of the day, the question is, how's it going to affect industry sales? And the real big question is, if this taxation is going to affect consumption and really reduce obesity or diabetes. Those are the midterm to long-term questions that need to be answered as this goes along. So this now brings us to the things that we're talking about for the opportunities in the marketplace. Because leading brands are well positioned and accepted by the consumer, it's important to identify these market niches and name strategies towards them. So products for better healthy living or good for you or better for you, such as low-fat, sugar-free, allergy-free, natural, organic, will have their place here in the market. Other substitutes, healthy snacks or desserts, those that might have less than 275 kilocalories per 100 grams, are the items that would probably have the most success or open new markets here in Mexico. Foodies are always looking for premium products, so that's another niche in the marketplace to look to. And again, it might be via organics or gourmet products or natural products as well. The younger population in Mexico, as I mentioned before, is very active. Those that have any education above high school generally don't have too hard a time finding a job. The problem here in Mexico is also pay levels. So you're finding a lot of young people still living at home, or you find a lot of young people living together, and they're looking for foods that are easy to handle, prepare, such as IQ products that have been IQF or ready to use or quick and easy. The food categories that would come up to mind here again as categories would be premium brands, healthy choices, novelty items, gourmet products ready to serve, or home meal replacements. Again, not being able to have this interchange with the people on the other side. You know what you do. I'd like to hear from you, hopefully at the end of this presentation, to see what items are what you have in mind for this marketplace. There is definitely a niche for products, specialty goods, and hopefully that your categories fit right into play here. The thing that I would like to talk as a way to get into this marketplace, unless you have a very strong brand or something very unique, it's usually very tough to get into in the marketplace for what it costs to get slotting, what it might cost to do advertising, what it might take for someone to get the product to market. It's not that easy to be able to knock on everybody's door and say, here I am, you know, I've got the right product for your market. It's the best. Everybody's going to get skinny, and it costs very little, et cetera, et cetera. So I think a good approach today, and the way that the market has been moving here in Mexico is towards private label products. It's one way that there can be differentiation from one company to another, from one supermarket chain to another, from one convenience store to another, even the pharmacies that have the convenience side to them. So when we talk about private label, you know, we're talking about a product as a mean of distinction, that my product is better than yours, or mine is different than yours. Consumers recognize today the house brands for their quality and value. Here also we found that the consumers, as in maybe other markets, are willing to try new products when they do recognize the brand. And if the brand happens to be a brand that they know, which is the supermarket brand, then there's a better shot of our getting our products to market that way. The pie chart that you see there on the screen at 3.2% in Latin American private label, it's a tough data to find down here. There's really no big associations like there are in the U.S. and Canada, the Private Label Manufacturers Association, for example. A show that I attend every couple of years myself. I know that in the United States, I'm not sure of Canada, but the data runs around 20% of the total market share of products with private brands or private labels. Here, again, we went looking, scouring, searching for this data all over the place, and the only thing we could come up with was this data for Latin America as a whole at 3.2%. Mexico, I think, is a little bit more advanced than that probably than the rest of Latin America, and I don't even want to speculate as to what it is. What I do want to say is that if you have the right product, and it's a product that can get to market better through this channel, there are lots of opportunities for products in private label. Just so that you can see what the size of the market is, we pull up the next screen and you can see, you know, Walmart has private labels for different types of products. Extra Special is a gourmet line that they have for their supermarkets that are called Superama here in Mexico, which is the equivalent to their neighborhood markets in the United States. World Table is their gourmet line through the Walmart superstores. Great Value, we all know, is the everyday food products that are staple goods more than anything. Then you have the other areas of the supermarket, the middle aisles or the health and beauty. You have Equate. Aurrera is their bodega type setup, private label. Olroy is something obviously that's for the pet market. Comercial Mexicana is one of our leading stores, supermarkets in Mexico. Their private labels are Golden Hills and Que Precio. And Que Precio means what a price. Soriana, who's actually really the second largest supermarket chain in Mexico, second to Walmart, with around 500 stores in their different formats, has their Soriana brand, their Hypermart brand, and Valley Food. Chedraui has two private labels, being Chedraui and Chedraui Selecto. Selecto being the more gourmet, just as the name sounds. In total, the whole Mexican marketplace in supermarkets, some 4,000 supermarkets. And I'll go back to what I was saying before. To get onto the shelves in Mexico, you can see that the benefits of private label is if they need the product or they want the product, they see value in your product, you'll get shelf space right away. You don't have to put out of your pocket the money for advertising. You might have to participate in a percentage of your sales or some other way, but you won't have to go to the market directly with your own advertising. The same with promotions. It's something that's done in joint working with your category manager in the supermarket. In volumes, that's another thing that's very important. You can do probably much better volumes by working through the private labels and having, again, the advantages that I mentioned just before, and be able to sell much more product right off the bat. The other channels that there are here for private label or for your product per se, it doesn't necessarily have to be private label. I'm just using that today as my tip or my recommendation to you, unless, again, I said, if you have your own brands and or something very unique, there's no reason why not to try to build more or marketplace for your brands. But again, if you are interested in the marketplace, again, we have the convenience stores. I mentioned on the right here, it says points of purchase over 13,000 locations. That data is actually, it's like a running calculator, like in Las Vegas for the slot machines. It's unbelievable what they're opening daily here in the whole of Mexico for convenience stores. I will mention that the leading one, which is in the middle of the chart here, you can probably not even understand what it says, but it says OXXO, O-X-X-O. They themselves belong to FEMSA, who is the Coca-Cola bottling, and belongs to, they're the ones that have the Dos Equis beer for you beer fans up there. They have themselves now over 13,000 locations throughout Mexico. I say 13,000 for them, and if I were to tell you that Walmart has 250 supercenters, it has 150 some Sam's Clubs. When you're talking about 13,000 convenience stores just from one company, it's amazing what they're doing down here. We have 7-Eleven, who has over 1,000 stores. We have Circle K that has now around 1,000 stores as well. These are giving a lot of our supermarket chains a little bit of a headache right now because they have taken advantage of the spontaneity of the marketplace, the convenience in the marketplace, and have taken online food lines that are competitively priced. Before, we used to think that the convenience stores had to be a little bit overpriced. Some items are. That's always going to be. And, it's not just to go there for your cigarettes, beer, or soft drinks. Now, it's actually where you'll find people on their way home, stop, buy the eggs, buy the milk, buy the loaf of bread. So, again, it's a great segment to look into if you have the right item. On that same tone, the pharmacies here. I'm mentioning Benavides as one of them. It's one of the leading chains. Farmacias Guadalajara had some 1,000 locations also. And they've become, again, a convenience store. Someone goes in for pick up a prescription. At the same time, they can take advantage and buy what they might need for the house. Again, the milk, the eggs, the ham, the cheese, et cetera, et cetera. So these are areas that have a great opportunity in Mexico. I'm looking at my watch, and I see the time's just flying, which when you are a salesman like myself, we always lose time, concept of the time. So anyway, things to consider about the Mexican marketplace. Okay, now that we're talking about if your product, you've got the right product or you know which niche you're trying to look for, okay, it's a market that's very price sensitive, okay? You have to consider, how am I going to promote? Where am I going to have the money? Can I build it into my pricing? Can I not build it into my pricing, okay? At the end of this discussion, we're going to do an exercise which will give you an idea if your product's going to be too expensive or not for the marketplace. So again, these are things to think about along the way here. Do I want to go direct? Do I want to sell directly to Walmart, or do I want to go, through a distributor? Or do I want to do it with a rep down here who builds his own distributor network down here? There are things to consider. Volume. Do I have the capacity? Can I respond quickly enough for the demand in the marketplace? Again, remember, we're talking about a marketplace of potentially 50 million people in the economically active sector of our population. Okay, what is my store cluster? Am I looking for stores that will handle just gourmet product? How many stores do I have to attend there? Can I handle the amount of volume so you don't get hit with charges for fill rate? If you don't fill your orders, you get hit with some heavy charges on that. What's our response time from Canada to Mexico? We'll go through that in a few minutes as well. Okay, is my quality as good as or better than the quality of the leader in the marketplace? Do I have the certifications? Am I a company that can compete on an international scale? Do I have the SQF certifications? Am I following the food safety initiatives, et cetera, et cetera? Am I open to the annual audits within my company and installations? Okay, again, do my products bring added value to the table? Okay, is my pricing, my quality, and the volume that I'm going to sell, do they all fall in line? Those are the questions you have to ask to see if you're ready to do it. The considerations also: can you have the working capital that'll hold up credit terms when a company like Walmart works from 45 to 90 days, depending on the department? The same with the others, between 45 and 60 days, as you can see the different chains and what's listed. Okay, do I have the capability internally to fulfill the legal requirements for Mexico? Mexico has labeling issues. Okay, everything has to be labeled in Spanish. Doesn't mean it has to be all Spanish. You might have a package that's just in English and French, as required in Canada. All you might have to do is have it translated and set up to fulfill the requirements as Mexico's formats require. Our nutritional label, as you'll see there on the right-hand side there, is not necessarily calculated the same way as it is calculated in the U.S. and Canada. So again, those are considerations you have to take into place to see who's going to be able to do it for you. Are you going to do it yourself? Are you going to hire someone to do it up there? Or can your distributor do it? Can your freight forwarder do it? Your customs broker handle this for you? So those are other considerations as well. Okay, getting to Mexico. Again, we have different laws. Right now, with the new tax law that we were talking about, the 8% junk food tax, unfortunately, this is affecting us in many ways, and cash flow is one of them. For example, if you have a cake item or something that falls into that category, we have to pay that 8% now at the border as we bring it in. We get it back, obviously, when we resell the item to our customer. So, again, it's a cash flow issue. The good news is, we're a NAFTA country. The three countries, the U.S., Mexico, Canada, have done very well through this. What do you need to do? What do you need to know about importation? There are people that can help you through this, but those are considerations. Okay, logistics from where you guys, if most of you are in the northwest of Canada, it costs a lot of money to bring product down to the border here in Mexico. Okay, is your product, does it require refrigeration? Does it require freezing? Does it, what needs to be done? How does your product need to be handled? Okay, those are the considerations that maybe to be taken in place for the marketplace. So, taking this to the final step here is, what are we going to do? How are we going to know if our product's the right product for Mexico? Okay, so we're going to work on this exercise of cost and pricing. Here are the considerations. A trailer load, we'll talk about a trailer load being 24,000 units. We'll talk about it being 24 pallets. Okay, so we're talking about 1,000 items per pallet. And we're going to use a $2 Canadian cost per item. So a full truckload will be $48,000. To get that truck to the border at Laredo, Texas, we're talking roughly $6,000. It's going to cost us $1,000. And again, this is a more or less figure, rounded numbers for the purpose of the exercise here. Your freight forwarder, who also would be your customs broker, works on a certain fixed fee plus a percentage of the value of your load. But again, let's talk around $1,000. The freight from Laredo, Texas, to cross the border to get items to Mexico City is roughly $1,500 Canadian. We're talking about an exchange rate today of roughly 12. Again, it's 12 and change or whatever, but for sake of this exercise and for just making things a little bit simpler, we're talking about 12 pesos for $1 Canadian. Warehousing costs here in Mexico, depending what your items are, for refrigeration and frozen, we're talking about roughly $1,000 a month. It's converted here on my chart to 18,000 pesos. And generally speaking, depending on the item, we would talk about a month and a half to give us enough lead time to have product. A guy or a distributor should have probably roughly about a month and a half's worth of product, considering what it's going to take you to produce up there, what it's going to take to ship, what it's going to take to cross the border, and to get down to the central part of Mexico, being Mexico City. What kind of margins we're going to work on as well for this exercise? Generally, an importer distributor will want to make 25% here. His cost of money is higher than the cost up there. Money for a small to medium-sized business runs anywhere from 12 to 18% here in Mexico. So that's a big consideration, and an annual interest rate. That's something to take into consideration as well. That's why his operating costs are very expensive here in Mexico. Electricity is expensive. The cost of land in Mexico City, being a metropolitan area, is very expensive. So operating expenses are very high, and most importer or distributors will work between 25 and even 30% on items. This is where they are taking responsibility and full possession of the product, okay? The supermarkets here in Mexico like to work on 35% margin as well. You'll find, depending the category, you'll find, depending the department, some that'll work on less, depending on the volumes that the type of merchandise will handle or will yield for them. So these are our premises, and to work through the numbers, I just did this real quickly for you. Okay, a full truckload is 48,000 Canadian plus 6,000 to the border. We're talking about $54,000 to Laredo, Texas. $1,000 to cross the border, or in other words for the customs broker or freight forwarder, plus $1,500 roughly freight to Mexico City. 56,500 is our total there. We'll turn this into our local currency of pesos, so that an exchange rate of 12, that gives us a total of 678,000 pesos. We'll add in that 18,000 peso warehouse fee, and we have our final cost to Mexico City at 690,000 pesos. We're going to divide that by the 24,000 units on our truck, and we're up to 29 pesos per item. Tack on the 25% margin for the distributor, and that comes out to 38 pesos and 67 centavos to the store, the supermarket, whoever the customer is going to be, and to the final consumer with the 35% margin that the supermarket or the convenience store is going to tack on. The final price to the consumer is 59 pesos and 50 centavos. This works out to be, as you can see at the bottom, almost $5 Canadian. So we started out with a product that was $2 Canadian, and we ended up with a product to the consumer at $4.95. Okay, this is just to give you an idea of what it costs to do business here in Mexico, and if your product is going to fit into the product blend that a consumer can afford. The thing here also, obviously, if you have more weight, more product, if you have less weight and more volume, these numbers are going to change on you. But I tried to take this as a simple example where a $2 item with 24,000 items on a trailer load will bring us up to a final consumer cost of $4.95. So again, these are the considerations. I hope this has given you a scope as to the marketplace, a way to get through things. I do want to leave you with a final comment. It's always great to meet people and to do business with people. And as John D. Rockefeller said, friendship founded on business is better than a business founded on friendship. I'm sure we've all lived through these types of experiences in our time, but I hope that with this talk you have found a new friend in Mexico, and if there's any way that we can help you to do business down here, we'd be more than happy to help you. I'm going to pass the microphone back over to Ken, and I guess we'll open things up for questions and answers.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Again, if you do have questions, send them to me via the chat box, as I mentioned earlier. We do have a couple questions. First off, somebody was wondering if your PowerPoint presentation was available.
It is available, but I believe it will be available through the Ag office up there with Paola Zaragoza, which you can pass that on to the people who have requested that. I would be more than happy to also send it. You can see my email on the screen right now. If you would be kind enough to send me an email and give me a little bit of your background, I'd be more than happy to send it to you.
Okay, how can we be assured of getting paid from the Mexican importer?
Great question. How can we be assured? Well, again, I don't know if there are any government guarantees up there that might support the risk involved there. It's very important to decide who you want to deal with and choosing the right partner in Mexico. Again, that would depend on a lot of factors, how much risk you're willing to take. Generally speaking, if it's a reputable company who's been in business for a while, who has products with the supermarkets, they would be willing sometimes either to pay up front on maybe the first shipment or so, or they might be willing to give you a letter of credit, a bank letter of credit, or just, you have to work sometimes on gut feeling and faith in the relationship that you can establish with your distributor or your end customer. If we're dealing directly with Walmart, there's no problem with getting paid. There, the negotiation is what's most important. How many days credit are we going to work with? And what kind of a credit line can we work with that? The other major supermarkets are listed on the stock exchange, so they are reputable companies, and really that shouldn't be so much a fear. You might have to check into more of, if you're going to deal with a distributor, more of their everyday practices. And we recommend coming down. It's best to come down and see what this marketplace is all about. People think that we're still running around on burros here, donkeys, but be surprised. We've got all the major cars. It's a major metropolitan area, and it's a city that really moves fast. It's a high-pressure marketplace to do business in as well. So as far as risk, every business has a risk. It's, again, I wouldn't put 100% of my business into Mexico, but if you have the excess capacity, if you're looking to explore new markets, Mexico is definitely a great market. It's a growing market. The new reforms, the fiscal reforms, the new energy reforms, there's going to be a lot of money flowing through Mexico in the next couple of years. It's tough doing business because of the way things are set up, but if you can get your foot into the market here, you have the possibility of growing in a market that's definitely going to be growing steadily in the next few years.
Okay, have you ever had any issues personally getting product over the border? The example is one time they approve it, the next time it gets denied.
I wouldn't say that that's been a problem that way. It's usually the first time you're bringing something that's new. This year, there were some changes in some of the regulations for importing at the border. For example, we bring in some products from the United States that have dairy product to them. And so the section of the law regarding dairy products changed, and the codes changed, and a different permit was required from the state agriculture of California in this case. Our product was held up a little bit longer, and again, these are extra costs because our product had to be frozen. So the time that is spent at the storage facility at Laredo, Texas, did cost us a few $100 more for that shipment. But generally, if you have the right customs broker, he is the one who should be doing the homework for you. Either he or your distributor who works with the custom broker should be able to find out what classification your product is, what permits you need for your product. And if everything is done properly from the beginning, there really shouldn't be too much of a problem at the border. Most problems happen at the change of the year when new regulations come out. The one I just mentioned in January, for example, changed again in April. So we did have a double problem with the same permit when it came to bringing in the same type of product again in May. But again, it was something we could overcome quickly because we understood the laws properly. If you're with the right partners, you will be able to get things across the border without too much of a hassle.
Does the exporter have to label his products in Spanish?
The exporter doesn't have to do the labeling. The product has to be labeled. So it can be labeled at the source, at your factory, at your plant up there, but generally labor costs more in Canada than it does down here in Mexico. Depending on the type of product line, if it's coming off of a production line, and labeling can be done quickly, or again, if it's a product that's going to be packaged directly where the printing has been done in Spanish. Again, a lot of the Canadian exporters or Canadian companies, you have to have everything in English and Spanish. If you're about to make up a new packaging and can include the Spanish and fulfill the requirements for Mexico, which why not do it at the source? If not, your importer is really the one who's responsible for complying with the law. For the product to get across the border, he has to say that he will comply with the law, and there is an agency that will do the work of notifying the government and responding for the importer for labeling the product. And once the product has gotten to its destination and has been labeled, it is up to that agency to free up the product or to send notification to the government that the product has been labeled properly at its final destination for the final consumer. There are products that don't necessarily even have to be labeled if they are products that are going to be used within a process. For example, if we're going to bring in a block of cheese as an example, and we're going to take the cheese and we're going to use it for pizzas down here. Well, we're not selling the cheese product as a final product to the consumer. Rather, we're going to be using it within our product to sell the pizza to the consumer. So their labeling doesn't have to be covered.
Okay, that's the last of our questions, and that wraps things up for today. I'd like to thank Mark for taking his time to share with us, and thank everybody for attending. This also wraps us our Importing to Mexico webinar series. Thanks again to everybody, and have a good day.